say that it feels right.
What's up, guys? It's the Blender, and today we are back in Cyberpunk 2077 with a build guide for our Netrunner, Overclocking Night City. One of the guys on one of my other builds asked for a Netrunner thing, and we've already made one, right? So I figured this would work. But with that, we did move or utilize weapon, the Yinglong, for the Don't Fear the Reaper runs. That does not mean that it was, like, you could always have just, not, and just hacked your way through it. It would have been slower, right? So in the interest of speed, we picked up the weapon, but we also couldn't invest in the perks, or in all the perks to make it sort of, like, really pop. So we don't have, like, things like submachine gun fun, we don't have things like sharpshooter, I'm pretty sure, etc., right? The gun is severely underpowered comparatively to where it could be if you really invested into it like a net gunner. With that being said, the kill that I did with Smasher that shows how to do Smasher in under 30 seconds is basically a universal kill. As long as you have a cyber deck and you have enough RAM to fire off detonate grenade, that will work, right? And you can do Smasher in like 30 seconds on very hard, Don't Fear the Reaper, no problems, right? Some builds may be able to do damage fast enough, or in that time period, right? Faster than those required animations, if you will, right? And so if you have a build that can do that, like a net gunner build that can, say, nuke out his health bar faster than, nuke out 50% of his health bar faster than the 50, or faster than the 10 seconds or whatever, 8 seconds that it takes to get him to be available for takedown after you go invisible, right? Then you could probably, beat that by a couple seconds. So depending on your build, you could do it faster. That one's just universally applicable. With that being said, let's get into it. We will have to take off some cyberware. So I figure we'll start here. Things that make the build operate, right? Axolotl is great, and there is an argument that you might be able to overclock, right? Because overclock has a pretty short cooldown in general, to not have to use Quantum Tuner, similar to the argument with Apogee, right? Sandy, right? Like, the cooldown is so short, and the extension duration happens, and then you also get cooldown reduction, right? By the time you come out of Apogee, you're likely have it full, so you're ready to go, right? That, because of how many people we can kill inside of a single overclock, we likely have a very similar scenario. So there may be an argument to not needing the Quantum Tuner, but I like, especially for like Don't Fear the Reapers and stuff like that, like when you need it on demand, right? And you might be skipping some enemies, or you might not have those enemies to provide you with that cooldown reduction. I pick up the Quantum Tuner. Because of that, it makes this sort of like really I don't know what you would call it, right? Like heavy on its cyberware. Like, we take and go 9 minimum in each of these sections in order to get 360, and then we fill all 360 without using arm slots. So there's some stuff there, right? Ideally, we'd love to have like deep field visual cortex here for the extra crit damage, since we're critting with our since we can crit with our our quick hacks. In this build, we're not critting with them, right? We're using bioconductor instead. This was because I'm using a Paraline. This is specifically Don't Fear the Reaper. This is because I'm using a Paraline, and I'm also using a Quantum Tuner, right? And I needed to provide myself crit, ideally, but I also, so that they could, but I wanted to get to a point where, like, they were, going to crit, but I couldn't get and justify the big boy because I didn't have enough space, right? This is 50 cyberware, right? So, like, if you had 50 cyberware, you want RAM recoup, you could make an argument for Phoenix, right? 250 RAM regen when your RAM's below 6, but this only applies up to 6, and then it stops once you hit 6. So I don't think that this is super good. It's not like you hit below 6, you get this big RAM regen, and then you scream, for like 12 seconds, you scream your RAM back up in a safe space. It just goes, all right, let's get it back to 6, and then it stops, right? And 6 at, iconic quick hacks is basically nothing, right? So I took armor. You could probably take a different armor set there. Epimorphic Skeleton, I think, is mandatory because we're doing a health style build. RAM Recoup is huge because it gives us RAM and also natural recovery, like restoring damage gives us, percentage of the damage in recuperation, right, in RAM. Adrenaline Converter, this is just sort of like a placeholder. It's cheap, right? This would ideally be a Visual Cortex. Neofiber, I don't think you can ever sleep on, right, or not use. Now, this is probably an argument for spring joints, to be fair, right, for giving mitigation chance, right? Here's mitigation chance, here's mitigation strength. Yeah, so sorry, I misspoke. Strength, right? This gives 11, this gives 19, that's 30% mitigation strength. Base mitigation strength is 50, that's 80%. So you only need 10% mitigation strength to reach the cap, right? You're super close. This makes, like, if we have 1,500 armor, and we have the 80% mitigation strength, we if we mitigate it, we mitigate like 90 something plus percent of all of the damage that's incoming. We also have micro generator. This is just a fill in. The problem here with like these things is that Smart Link and the tattoo overlap each other. So we don't really have a choice in if we want to have ambidextrous for extra stats. We probably have to have something there. I took the micro generator because it filled out our stuff, right? But we could do something like this. Heal on kill. This gives us health back, which is super good for our health scale, our health loop. All right, blood pump, not particularly necessary. It is a really good healing item. Gives us good healing over time, right? It's the most healing, I believe, over time, like from its instant health, and then it's also its overtime health. I believe it is more than any other thing, right, on there. So this is just the best bang for our buck here. It's not wholly necessary, but I don't know what else you would put in here, right? Like this, right? Health when you hit an enemy with a fully charged tech weapon shot. We're not doing tech weapons, right? Threat evac, okay, maybe if you wanted to go faster. Second heart's going to be double your stuff. Right? Black Mamba, we're not poisoning anybody, right? So, like, there's really no other good options for our setup. Sentry Optics, I believe Oracle is better. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Oracle. Let's see, like this. Yoink, yoink. Yeah, so here's the Oracle. Like, Oracle's sort of like the better version, right, of these things, but I don't really think I care, right? Like being able to see things behind cover would be cool. Is cool for like hacking. Like if you're doing a stealth hack, these are probably pretty awesome. But they're 10 instead of 2 in cyberware cost, right? And we're already spendy, right? Like it's already expensive to play this character, right? And this is with a Militech Paraline, right? Like don't get me. Like, what happens if you want to use a Tetronic? Do I have one? Yeah. He goes from 14 to 16, right? And a Raven is 20, right? So, like, here's your Tetronic Rippler with your stuff. Can you fit? Okay, now we can fit this, right? We've taken these pieces off, replaced this, right? Now we're at 356. We could come down on this is sort of like what the ideal would be looking at in cyberware capacity. Now, how do we fix that? How do we get the rest of these filled out so that we get like Chrome Constitution and stuff like that? I don't know if you can. Like this is 20. What do? You go to subdermal armor, right? And this is optical camo. You take like carapace or counter shell. I don't see counter shell in here. Yeah, counter shell. But these are both 10, right? So like, you're gonna save 6 for 10. Yeah, let's do that, right? Yeah, let's do counter shell there, right? Well, now we've lost a bunch of armor. Not that armor's crazy important. Once you get to like 600 to 700, you're sort of like in the sweet spot there. But now we're at 334. Maybe we can get some arms. We can't fit the deep field visual cortex. That's just not possible, right? And we don't really have any good options here, right? So we have Terracine Ejector for takedowns. If you're doing a stealth build, that's not bad. But like, so if you're doing like stealth hacking, right? But if you're not, right, like Defense-Nikov, no, we're not doing Kresnikov, right? And we don't have space for Defense-Nikov here. Even if we choose it, like I'm pretty sure we can't afford it. Oh, it's 16. We could do that. Then we're going to be at 344. I don't know if like this is 14. Is Kresnikov 14? It's 12. We'd have 2 space available. Right, which means now we're taking the coprocessor off, we're taking away ambidextrous. Maybe we could do that, right? Like there are, you kind of play with it how you want, but the things that sort of like make the build work is, one, getting a bunch of health, making sure you crit. Like if you take Quantum Tuner off, all your problems are solved, right? You put on Visual Cortex, you put on, probably could do a Kresnikov setup, right? That'd be 355, and then Mechatronic Core. You'd be at 360, right? So this would be probably one of your strongest ones. You're forcing 100% mitigation, right? During like Kresnikov here, or it's 90%, but you get more from the rest of them, right? Your other passives, right? Shock and awe. Well, not shock and awe, but like, what is the pyromania, stuff like that. You get giant amounts of health. Now, the only problem here is that when you get in here, you start losing your, like, this is percentage-based HP, right? So, like, we're reducing our health by 151. If this is 800, right, then that could be a problem. And I think combat health is... I don't know if the in-combat regen is a flat number or if it's based off of your overall health. If it's based off your overall health, this hurts, right? But if not, then so be it. But even so, we're probably sitting somewhere around like 600 health this way. But now we have like super crit capacity. We have 100% crit chance, right? And we crit on all of our stuff, and we could do it to it. I was able to adjust that and do overclock with Quantum Tuner by removing the 100% crit chance, relying on 40%, because I didn't need my hacks to crit. I don't need Detonate Grenade to crit against Atom Smasher because it always hits for the same amount, 50% of his health, right? I don't need Sonic Shock to crit on the drones, right, or the mechs inside of the lobbies, or the mechs that I engage, because it's like significantly more effective against them, and so and I just queue it up twice, and they just fall over anyway, right? So like I didn't need those for my setup, but with a Tetronic Rippler, this would probably be similar to the setup I would go with, right? You could probably adjust this to an adrenaline converter with a optical camo, right? And then now you're in the territory. This is probably what I would personally run with, because this gives me optical camo as an opt-out, right? If I'm staying with 360 and staying with the extra thing, then maybe you choose counter shell here, right? This makes you a lot more tanky, right? Also gives you some passive stuff. When you lose a bunch of your health within a certain amount of time, you get 50% mitigation chance on top of like Pyromania stacking, etc., right? So you can sort of play with these however you want. You can get rid of this, go to, like I had it here, with a regular field visual cortex, which gives you more space. I then use shock and awe to then stack my Pyromania, and voila, here we are, right? No quantum tuner, we're at 350. We can actually, push this up to a micro generator. We could take it as this is 9, so we could take a handle wraps if we're doing a 356 build, right? There's a lot of flexibility in these things, and I maintain that Netrunner is the most versatile way to play the game with the lowest skill ceiling. So like it's the best build to be like, I'm just starting out, I don't know what's going on, I want to just sort of like invest in the tree, not look at the perks, not worry about synergies, and just play the game. right? Netrunner is able to do that. It has synergies with guns. It has synergies with itself. It has synergies with melee, right? Through monowire. It has synergies with different ailments and effects, etc., right? Like, it has so much breadth and utility that and it's kind of a powerhouse on its own. The gameplay loop to me gets boring, right? When I'm walking up to a group of enemies, I hit pause time effectively. I queue up, 4 different quick hacks on each one of them, and then I let go of time, and they all fry to death and give me my stuff back, and allowing me to loop that again, right? That to me is not particularly fun. It's a blast, and you make some cool clips out of it, but it's sort of it gets tedious, monotonous, right? And then, like, everything's the same, and then all of a sudden you sort of get lulled into this state of safety where you're like, everything's a one shot, everything's gonna die, I'm gonna walk in here and do my combo and everything goes away, haha, right? And then you meet a boss that has a vulnerability phase, or Lord help you, counter hacking and its own ice, and now you're screwed. You have no idea how to take care of him, and he just beats you into a submission, right? Unless you use some sort of gimmick. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Right? So this is probably how I would set it up, right? And like I said, it's flavor. Like, if you want to have the extra crit damage, then, maybe you make that choice and you remove some cyberware here, and maybe you choose a Krasneskov boosting system, even though you're not going to use it, right? You're removing some damage from mechs, but you're doing that. You want a quantum tuner, maybe you're getting a visual cortex. Maybe you want both of them, so you can do a ton of damage because you're doing a stealth build, so you get rid of chitin, which is expensive, right? So, like, there's a lot of different ways to do this. This way, I'm setting up to basically to be able to go into stealth when I want to, right? To force basically, like, enemies to lose me, so when mid combat, if I desire, I'm taking shock and awe, so that when I get hit, I'm kicking out electrical pulses, which are stacking my pyromania, which is giving me more mitigation chance, which is then giving me more mitigation possibility, and since I have 80% passive on my mitigation strength, right, it's giving me a lot of damage reduction, and then I'm using chitin for armor. I would put all of these to give me more armor, right, to 5++, so they max out their armor values, right? I'm not going to 1500 armor, which is I think it's like 50% damage reduction because I'm relying on mitigation, but I'm stacking health so that I can absorb whatever hits do come, and then I'm mitigating basically at 100%, which means that I'm then just standing in front of things and putting up these hacks. And I don't have to stand in front of things for long anyway. With that being said, I'm also using chitin, which has like a big percentage health regen rate per attribute point. Ideally, this goes to 20, right? So that's how I'd set this up in general. We'll take some of these expensive pieces out so that we can do a respec on our character and sort of go over this skill stuff. Here I'll go over skill progression. Netrunner's one of the more demanding in skills, right? On most of them, we go to 35 for Netrunner, and then we get 60, 60, 60, right? And this naturally will eventually get to 60, right? And so we can sort of like sit in there, but we don't need that for Netrunner. We are able to skip 60s in both here, right? Because we're not using Berserk or Sandy, but EMP Blast is still important. The damage bonuses while stealth is still sort of important for the way I run the Don't Fear the Reaper runs, etc. And if you were doing a stealth Netrunner, but getting to 60 Netrunning can be a pain. If you level as Netrunner, you're going to be here anyway. But yeah, it can sort of be it can be annoying to like level these skills individually. Right, because especially like if you are net running and you've been net running all the way to 60, and then you're like, now I need to level these other skills. Now you're gonna go grab a katana or a pistol or some throwing knives, right? Some gorilla fists, right? And this'll maybe some tech shotguns or tech weapons or something like that, right? Like you have to specifically target these things that are outside of your build, right? So you have to sort of adjust points, and you may or may not have the points to sort of like target based off of how you built the character. So let's reset the attributes. Hey, can I do it? Cyberware is installed in the affected cyberware slot. Ah, you dirty rat. Now can I do it? Yes. Alright, so let's say we just did a respec. If you were just starting out, right, you get what? 6 in 2 abilities, right? And then 4 in another one, and then the others get 3. I'd take 4 in body right off the bat, right? I'd take we did technical's kind of meh, right? At 4. Reflexes is good at 4. We definitely want intelligence at 4, right? And we don't really need cool at 4 yet. So probably reflexes here, right? And then we'll get the big ones. We'll get the big things that we need, right? So here we're going to take 1 here, and then you could, if you're planning on being in people's faces, at this lower level, right, things murk you. And you don't have the defenses to sort of stand in their face, so I would say take the reduced traceability so you can hack longer before you are actually found out, right? And this will basically never come into play because your hacks are cheap and things are going fine, right? In body, we want these 2, right? And then at some point we'll want the rest of these, right? Specifically Comeback Kid, but that will be later when we've already got like more health and we've got other things to help regen like Kite. And then cool, we're good. Intelligence, we're fine, right? And so then, which one do you, that's 2 at 4, or 3 at 4. So we get 2 of these that we get to move to 6, right? Or you just stick everything at 3, right? Continue anyway, and then you, at the end of the like prologue introduction to how everything works, etc., and you get your character for his first time in Watson, you then get to apply all of these points without having to respec, right? So that's probably what I would do. So in that case, we get what? 4 more points? Yeah, 4 more points. So I would put them all in int. Now this is basically where you would start. This isn't a super investment, you know, it's like 3, 4 or 5 points in total, right? And then the moment we get 9, I would push 9, right? Now, the biggest point is getting these 2 points, or these 4 points, right, into these 2, right? This gives us more RAM recovery, right, more quick hack damage in general, so we actually, like, hurt, right? And then this just helps us to, like, start stacking Qs, right, so we can put 2 things on an enemy at a time. There are other things here, like if you're using a Tetronic Rippler, you probably aren't yet, unless you've found one or specifically bought one. If you are, take Ice Pick, right? This sort of like helps with that like combat control style Q that it wants you to put in. If you're using something like Overheat and Contagion, take System Overwhelm instead, right? This gives you increased percentage damage based off of effects. So if they're poisoned, right, and shocked and bleeding, right, you get percentage increases on your quick hacks for those, along with unique quick hacks. So if you're doing the Tetronic Rippler type thing, where you're doing a control and then a combat and then a control and then a combat, so like let's say you did a Sonic Shock into an Overheat, into a Reboot Optics, into a Synapse Burnout, right? That burnout is going to have 28% just from this, right? In addition to, like, you set him on fire, so you got another 7. So probably by the time you get to the burnout, this ability is giving you 35% increased damage on your quick hack. That's pretty solid, you know, extras. And that would go really well with the Tetronic Rippler. If you're doing something more like, you know, throwing up stuff like Reboot Optics and using that time frame to kill them, whether with blades or with guns, etc., then I'd probably skip doing this, and I'd take Speculization, right? Or Speculation. It's going to help you with RAM recovery, right? Quick hacks that are on the character. If you got a Tetronic Rippler, in late game where it like spreads reboot optics to everybody around you. You could use that in conjunction with like a net gunner setup, and then just, you know, your smart weapon murders everybody in the area, but they all have reboot optics. This gives you RAM equal to like quick hacks that are on targets that you didn't have to spend RAM to put on. So that can be pretty powerful. Data recycler, not terrible. I don't necessarily get this till later, because recovering 80% of RAM cost of quick hacks and Q remaining, right? Typically at this level, like we can only put 2 in there. Our second one's like probably killing them. We're probably putting up like overheat twice, and that's what's killing them, right? Do we need the RAM back from that? Maybe, maybe not, right? Maybe, right? Because it's remaining in their queue. We're not putting much in there. So like, what, you one-shot him with the first one, and then you got the RAM back for the second one? But unlikely, right? So I don't find this to be useful till late game. This one is a like, if you're at this point hunting perk shards, like if you created your character, you got out of the intro, maybe got through Konpeki. You're probably not through Konpeki yet, right? But let's say you got through Konpeki, right? And then you went straight out to go perk shard farming, right? Then you probably have enough to go ahead and get these. These are more quality of life than necessary, right? This basically, the best thing about this is to, when somebody's like tracing you, or like a Netrunner is looking for you, or they're trying to hack you, they're like looking through the camera to put up a cyberware malfunction on you, you can just ignore the fact that camera entirely, and you'll be able to see the Netrunner highlighted in the combat function. And since you can pause time with your Netrun cyberdeck ability anyway, right, you just look at them and then you load it, right? And so you can do that through walls and around corners and stuff like that. So you can kill the thing that's trying to drop you or debuff you from distance and without ever actually having to see them, right? In the same realm is copy paste, right? This allows like anything, like if you hit the ping and they're all connected, right? You pop that Netrunner and all of a sudden it spreads whatever things that you put on it to everybody else that's connected. So that's a good way to do it, but these are all quality of life. If you don't have perks for these, or you didn't go perk shard farming, then you probably don't. I would just skip them. And then feedback loop, basically never get. This, for whatever reason, has some sort of bug that randomly, I don't know what the trigger is, but when it happens, it basically makes this work the opposite way, right? And since we're utilizing our health for our RAM, etc., this just starts deleting health from you over time, right? And it doesn't stop, as far as I know, until you die or reload or something like that. So this is a pain in the keister to manage and sort of like watch out for, and it can happen in combat, right? And so that's a problem. Now, once we're here, we have decisions to make, right? We're decently powerful, right? Where do we go? My theory is that the best offense is a good defense. If you've seen any of my Don't Fear the Reaper runs, that's sort of pretty self-evident. So I would take this to 15, specifically because I want overclock. And the reason I want overclock is because, one, this starts the ability for me to loop, right, so that I get health back, and it starts to make it so that I can use my health and RAM interchangeably, etc. You can put yourself in some bad situations with this. Don't be careful there. But I want to be able to, murder these people as fast as possible, and I want to be able to do it continuously. And until I get overclock, available, right, which is going to give me more RAM and more capacity to do those things, right, and then use my health, right, I don't have that ability to do that, right. Getting this gives me the extra Q hack, so now we have 3, right, which sort of lets us, with a Tetronic Rippler type thing, we can sort of cycle our quick hacks in a way to where maybe we do overheat into a reboot optics, into a synapse burnout, and then the synapse burnout is the killer, right? And if we kill with synapse burnout, I believe it's this one. It's one of these. One of these is specifically if you kill with synapse burnout, it replaces the cost, right? Or it continues the overclock. I don't remember where it is. Maybe it's on the deck. But regardless, like, you have the ability to sort of like push your overclock capacity even further. Q prioritization, this is huge, especially if you are getting third, right? If you're prioritizing damage, this is one of the last things you would get. But this makes it go off faster, makes it a lot smoother, right? So I think the game plays smoother this way. And then this one gives us increased damage as our health decreases, since we're now using overclock to utilize our health. This is big. We should probably, at this point, be investing in a blood pump, and ideally have, maybe an epimorphic skeleton, even if it's a low tier one, to sort of like boost our health, right? The power surge, where it gives health equal to 5 times your max RAM, this is probably okay, but not super necessary. We're relying more on health items and natural regen early, and we want to get these going, right? So we want health for each quick act queued on an enemy at the time you neutralize them. So this sort of makes it so if we, let's say they're small enemies, so we pop up a, just use a triple synapse burnout or something like that, or use synapse burnout and then double cyberware malfunction, right? And the burnout kills them because they're a low tier enemy, but you have 2 cyberware malfunctions, you get 50 health right out the gate. This can be a really good way to forcibly increase your health, right? So we're using our health to do our hacks. Using our health and getting low on health makes them do more damage. Making them do more damage can make it so that they one-shot things and give us health back for the lower, all the things that are in the queue, so 50 to 75 health for every kill, right? Which means that if we're at 300 or 400 health, right, every time we kill, we're getting 75% of a bar, right? Or every time we kill 3 enemies, we're basically getting 225 out of 300 health, right? At max level, you're like, without Edgerunner, you're probably sitting somewhere around 800 health, right? If you're queuing up 4 things on 4 enemies, 3 of those are giving you, health back. You're getting, 12 times 5, 600 health every time that happens, right? Now it's a pain, because that means every time you see a pack of enemies, you're in overclock and you are, pausing time, looking at them, queuing up a bunch of things. If this game had quick hacking as hotkeys, where like you could like scroll through a thing and you had a hotkey to apply, said like for uploading, or maybe I could hit one, maybe doing net running, removed weapons, and you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right, as your quick hacks. So you could be like, this guy, I look at him and I go 2, 2, 3, right? I look at this guy, I go 2, 3, 4, right? 2, 2, 5, 4, right? Like, and they become number combos because they were, hotkey to your stuff. That would be sick, right? I think there's a mod for that, but I don't play with like mods really. Eventually power surge, right? Finisher with live wire only if you're doing live wire, right? If you are, I believe this scales off melee in general, right? And melee quick hack build is sort of hilarious, but there is a fun sort of like synergy that you can do with like contagion, like throwing up contagion with a raven deck that then spreads to everybody, right? And then you just smack them down with a burning wire and they blow up because of the poison and fire interaction. And you can sort of scale explosion damage if you want, right? Stuff like that. And then once we're at 15, I think we have most of our power, right? Obviously, we don't have spillover, and we don't have our 4th Q mastery, and then the reduced cost. So this loop can get a little costly. We'll eventually run out of health, depending on how we're like setting it up. But this is sort of like the cost saver, right? You could choose to go there, but by this time, we're probably going to be pretty cyberware starved. We're and perk starved, right? If you've gone and did perk hunting, right, to get to here, right, then you probably have all of these without needing to like do anything else, right? But if you haven't, you likely need more perks. So I would start looking at like we're rotating, we're using our health, etc. So I would go into body, and now here I'm just basically straight shotting it all the way to 15, right? I know this is going to put us in a cyberware deficit. Right? Like, we are going to be starved for cyberware. We likely don't have chitin, right? But you don't want to open up Dogtown, until after level 25. You don't want to kill the the psycho killers, the cyber psychos, until after 25. Because if you do that quest before 25, if you finish that quest before 25, you don't get as much cyberware capacity out of the cyberware shard, so you lose cyberware capacity overall. And if you open up Dogtown, there is a cyberware shard in the parking garage as you go to there. There's a perk shard and a cyberware shard that you basically can never go back and get. And if you're not level 25, that cyberware shard won't be tier 4, and so you lose out on cyberware capacity there. So, we're likely sort of in this area where we're probably pretty strong for where we're at. We're running around the world. We don't have chitin available to be able to sort of boost our health regen and stuff like that, but we also sort of need health to be able to do that. So I would take body to 15 and push this just in general, right? So that, and then I'd use these points that got me to, plus 12, right? So we went from 4 to 12, that's 8 points, right? That are going to help us fill out our intelligence tree and get it to here, right? Whether we're perk shard farming or not. After that happens, we are going to make some more decisions, right? We sort of have the option here to push intelligence, right? That's 5, right? Maybe we add in some technical ability, right? Reflexes, etc., etc. Now, technical ability 4, right? If you are perk heavy, because you did perk shard farming, then getting this to 4, not terrible, right? So you can at least get, increased health, like usage and regen and recharge speed, and then how much health you get out of each use, right? This is pretty good, right? And then we're likely going to want to start. We're starting to get health at 15 body, so I'd at least get comeback kid, though we would eventually want to grab these, right? Now, here's sort of the decision process, and it's based off where your cyberware capacity is at, and versus where you want it to be and what items you want to have. If you're looking at, you've kept up with your cyberware capacity, your 40 attributes. So we're level 20 here. Yeah, we're level 20 here. So we're level 20. We finished Konpeki. We've probably done a few Watson gigs, maybe, right? Maybe finished most Watson gigs. I think you'd be higher than that, right? We'd be looking at possibly either being done with races or doing races, right? Somewhere around this point. Where do you go from here? If you're like, I'm comfortable with doing some of these non-combat related stuff like races and other quests and opening things up and doing like a non-combat style quests in order, or low combat style quests in order to finish out another 5 levels, right? Then take intelligence. Get yourself some big intelligence, right? Because we're gonna go to 20 on this no matter what. Get this done. Get these 3 points in here, right? And enjoy it, right? Put up system overhaul and you're set, right? Now, you probably have synapse burnout, you're probably looking at a system collapse, right? Other things like that. We're now more expensive and we have 4 things to queue up. We can now really take advantage of Data Recycler. But once we're here, we're basically done. If you're specifically looking to be in somebody's face, right, and you want to be able to quick hack while standing in front of them, pick up this. Makes quick hacks less problematic. If you are doing that style, I'd probably say you don't care about traceability anymore, right? If you're doing like a stealth style, you want traceability and you want Shadow Runner, right? And you might use this because you're close, but you probably don't need it, right? You're probably doing takedowns when you're that close anyway. Maybe you want to be able to do like memory wipe, and memory wipe's expensive, right? So you're like, okay, I'm going to use this. And then I take the explosion damage for basically like anything that is explosives is thing like it says from hacked devices, but it basically just applies to like detonate grenade. It applies to the explosion, as far as I can tell, of like gas plus overheat, stuff like that, right? Any of those combinations, right? They go off, right? So this is good just in general explosion damage, and then we're done. We're done here. Right? Since we're not leaning into weapons, we're not leaning into smart weapons in any way, so we're done in this tree. right? Now, if you don't do that and you go to somewhere else, I'd probably suggest pushing technical so that you start gaining more capacity to be more tanky, to be more effective at what you're trying to do, right? And so in that case, I would push the tech tree, right? Because we do get things, you know, you get those same 5 levels, all of a sudden you open up, you know, tech. You open up third piece cyberware. That was the wrong button. You open up the ability to get crafting components. This is huge, right? You get some extra cyberware capacity out of this because we've got a couple of these past 9 right now. Chrome Constitution makes you a little bit more tanky. We get some more, like maybe we're not using a blood pump, so we get field medic. If we are, you know, we get borrowed time. So if we get into a pinch scenario, we get that last hack off after we popped ourselves down into low health, right? That hack kills somebody. We get a big recharge. It goes off, you know, whether that's biomonitor or manual, right? And we're set, right? So this is sort of the more conservative approach, right? Pushing your intelligence is more of the like aggressive. I just care about doing damage, or I'm okay with sort of like delaying the reward of the combat and just doing some of the non-combat style quests in order to get there. Now, at this point, we're at 15 body. Pretty good health. We're at 20 intelligence. We can basically kill whatever we want. Reflexes are at 4. We can't air dash, so we're not super mobile, but we're not trying to be mobile. We're just trying to get into space, hack people to death, and then loot. Get into space, hack people to death, and then loot, right? We don't really need to be dash jumping all over the place, right? So, because of that, I would take tech to 15. This opens up more cyberware. Additional hand slot if we need it. You could use the cellular adapter. It is a really good early game piece, right, for defense-wise, right, and whatnot, and its bonuses. But I think in end game it sort of like misses out. Additionally, you don't need the second hand slot if it's not going to give you any specific stats that are going to help you, right? So you don't. It's not necessary. So you can take that out. Pyromania is huge, right, for damage mitigation, right, between friendlier fire and heat shield. This is pretty big, right? But unless you're tossing out like grenades all over the place to like sort of stack it, using a Yinglong maybe to like create those, right? You don't have ticking time bomb to cause your overclock to do it, right? You probably don't have 60 in engineer, so you're not getting, you know, even if you got Edge Runner and got Fury, right, you're probably not getting it off of there. So you don't really have a whole lot of ways to stack Pyromania. So while we're going to put this here, just know that these 5 points are sort of a late game, when you have Shock and Awe, when you have Ticking Time Bomb, when you have EMP, right, then you can sort of do this with an optical camo setup. If you don't have it, you're going to need a grenade, right? And maybe you're not doing a stealth and you don't want stealth at all, so you're throwing out grenades anyway. In that case, I believe the anti-personnel grenade does not cause any of these to stack, so you're looking at EMP grenades, frag grenades, stuff like that. But then I would sit, right? Unless you need cyberware capacity, unless you're just starving, you've opened up Dogtown, you're trying to get the 100% crit thing set up, right? Like, which is going to starve you for capacity because that thing's expensive to use, right? Then I wouldn't push Edge Runner. If you are starving capacity, push that to 20, get the Edge Runner, and go, right? But really, you can sort of like sit back and be like, I'm going to be way more versatile now, and you can go ahead and get your 15 reflexes. Now, the only thing we're here is movement, right? So if you're okay without the movement, don't do it, right? And I think that the build changes if you do something like a stealth hacking, like a shadow runner type thing. That being said, this is sort of where we're sitting, right? This puts us at what? 47. So at 47, everything's online, right? We've got basically everything we want except for final touches, final pieces, and it's really more about where do you want to invest, right? If you're comfortable, right, with maybe it's not a Chrome compressor setup, right? But like if you're comfortable with a lower 306 cyberware, and you're like, I'm going to do bare bones or close to organic or something like that, I'm going to utilize just the these slots. I'm going to fill these slots to make sure I get this bonus, but then I don't need all of my cyberware slots, and I'm not using 2 hands, right? I do some cheap stuff in the other spots, right? And I just that maybe you take that out because you're not going to use it, right, or something like that. If you're in that scenario, then maybe you don't put technical anywhere near 20. You just stay at 15. You don't have to worry about it past this, right? I would personally, right, because I want the extra space, but and I need the 356, right? I need it. But this does tank my health, which means that when I overclock, I have less to work with if I go to Netrunner. If I want to lean into guns, maybe I want to lean into a Yinglong, I probably need Salt in the Wound. Salt in the Wound is huge, right? In order to do that, I need 20 reflexes. That's not something I can get, really. I can get 20 technical and 20 reflexes, but then I'm going to lose out on 20 body, which is more health, which I'm using naturally, and then it also means I'm not getting pain to gain. I could go 6 points into cool. I could get, this to 9. That gives me the 360 maximum cyberware capacity. Maybe I'm going for more cyberware. I need that extra 360, extra 5 or 4 capacity. Right? So then I need to go to cool. I don't need to go to cool 20, but I need to go to cool 9, which means that I've now taken the ability to take one of these, right, to 20. And entirely away, whichever one it is. Maybe you want to air dash and you want heavy body, so you take both of these. You take this to 6, right? And that's all you got, right? And you leave technical there. You're still at you're at 356 capacity. You get air dash, you get more health, and you get the ability to recharge your stuff faster. Technical's working with you, but you don't get the ability to go 356 cyberware capacity. So these are all sort of up to you choices. I would then take, if it was me, because I'm specifically looking to get my cyberware capacity to stupid amounts so I can get as much cyberware as possible and make the build crazy good, I'm taking this, right? I'm then probably taking ambidextrous to fit more overall slot pops, right? I love Tailwind on gun builds that need to be able to move around fast and stuff like that. I love Tailwind because it makes it so that I don't ever really as long as I have double jump, I don't have to worry about stamina. But in this scenario, right, you're either taking 6 in cool here and putting 2 in body. This gives you a 9 cool and a 17 body. It's pretty fun, pretty okay, right? But if you don't need that, right? And I don't think you technically do, right? Because obviously there are ways to. I showed that there are different setups that can happen at 356. I now go ahead and fill this out because we've got 20 body, we've got maximum health, right? We're maximizing our health in our cyberware, right? And then we go ahead and get this 4, 5, 6, because we don't really have anywhere else to put the points. And then the only pieces I'm getting out of here are these 2. It's the only 2 pieces I care about. You could say this. It says landing an attack on an enemy. If a hack is considered an attack, then get this. But again, is it really going to help, right? They're just all going to die at this point, right? We don't care if they see us or not. So I'm going to take that point out. We're not too worried about it. We're beefcakey. We have as much cyberware capacity as we can. We have all the mobility and the dash capacity that we want. We have super intelligence, right? And we can do whatever we do. We just obliterate mobs, right? We just aren't good with weapons. And we only have 6 perk points to sort of be able to make that happen, right? And if you even want it to happen at all, right? So if you're not looking to do that, then grab some crafting stuff. Don't worry about this. Maybe grab some, vehicle items and whatnot. Spend them however you want. You've got this one. You basically have 7 perk points, right? 6 if you choose not to have the blood pump, right? And you go with field medic instead, right? But you have all of these to be able to destroy your enemies, and then you just choose where you want these. These are sort of like, what do you want to play around with? Do you want to do mono wire inside, and then you also want to be able to stealthily kill your enemies, right? Well, now we've eaten up a bunch, right? Maybe you want the flavor here, and you want to be able to stealth kill your enemies. We just basically get everything in this tree minus feedback loop, and voila, he's a monster, right? He's versatile. He can do any of it, right? You can take these points back out, right? It's those. No, that's 4. Where's the other 2? Oh, these 2. Maybe you want to invest in some smart weapon stuff. Not a lot, but just make them more effective when you overclock, right? Make them do some damage. That's solid, right? Maybe you pull, this one, or maybe you pull ice pick because you're doing a pair line, right? And you pull this one, you get some regen out of here, right? You get RAM after neutralizing an enemy, but all our RAM is also health, so we get health. We basically get 2 health every time we neutralize an enemy, and we get to target super fast, right? So you just sort of have a lot of flexibility and lots of versatility in the general Netrunner, right? It's got a tree that basically outside of one perk that is bugged, right? If it worked, we would take it every time. And before they broke it, we would take it every time. It was fantastic, right? Like these 2 were sort of like, this is it's a feedback loop, data recycler, and what is it, blood demon, right? Like you get these 3 things and your loop is complete. You're good to go. When it broke, don't take this. But this tree is basically like, nothing is bad. None of it's super crazy overpowered, but none of it is bad, right? And yeah, that's sort of like the whole shindig, right? Now in my playthrough, I basically run as just a pure Netrunner up until I get to the just using quick hacks and stuff. I don't think I hardly ever, if ever, use a gun until I got to the deep Don't Fear the Reaper stuff. I do the run in that fashion as well, and then when I was like, how fast can it go? Like, can we speed run it? Right? I just found that it was too slow to jump, like to run out there, jump in there, right? Hack a whole bunch of people, right? Or the whole room, right? Let it all die, right? Because then I have to wait for triggers in the game itself, and then mobs spawn, and then I have to redo it again. And every time I'm slowing down time, right, in order to hack these things, and then they all die. I found it to be slower than if I had just, had like a katana or something like that and ran over there and killed the enemy. All right, when you're specifically loading up the queue every time, right, in the same with 4 things, and you have to go through a process, and they have to be uniquely different, right? Every character, right? Every time, like every person or every enemy is a specific target, and then 4 queues, like four presses worth of stuff. And you're doing this just not because he's going to die. He's going to die with the first one. You're doing it so that you get health returned back, and you get the cost returned back, and so that you can keep the loop going, right? So that's sort of my gripe with net running in general, is that it's slow, and it doesn't have a quick upload function or a way for you to be like, this is my preferred thing. If I hit this button, it puts these 4, if possible, on the target. That'd be a good one. But as it stands, it's sort of slow. It's just slower, and I think that reflects in both the fastest possible smasher kills. Like even pre 2.0, Netrunner isn't killing smasher as fast as we're killing him today with blades or blunt weapons, etc., etc. So like, it just has this cap that sort of exists where you're not able to really like go fast, right? With that being said, like I said, it has the lowest skill ceiling. Like, it is super easy to just run out there and be like, oh, you, right? Let me put a quick hack on you. Do I even have a cyber deck? I don't, right? Like, oh, let me find you, right? Like, let me look across here and, oh yeah, time slowed down to basically a stop here, right? It's going ever so slowly. Let me go ahead and add these things to your quick hack queue. 1, 2, and then you let go and they all die. And your health goes back to the top. And you're like, oh, look, I'll go to the next one. I'm overpowered. Sure, you might be overpowered, but you're not more powerful than other things, and you have an anti. Right, the moment you meet somebody who's organic and not connected, or you meet somebody who's not a fucking vending machine, or worse yet, you meet somebody who has anti-ice or like counter ice or something like that, like Smasher, right, where your uploads take forever and you likely get disabled before they go off anyway, then you're a sitting duck, man. So, hope you enjoyed my Netrunner Flame along with the Netrunner build. This will work. It will crush, right? And if you want proof of that, the playthrough's on the channel. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next one.